Good morning, my name is John Smeaton. I welcome you to this training open day as the proud chairman of the FPA. We are really delighted to be putting on this virtual event for you today, as training is something that myself and the entire FPA board are committed to. We feel it is something that will focus the sector and go some way towards moving us from a difficult, dark place where people have not been accountable and standards have not been maintained, into a new, honest and capable world where fire safety becomes more like health and safety, something that we all think about and manage irrespective of our day roles. So why do we need to train people in fire safety? Life safety is clearly the number one priority in the UK. We are a developed nation, and in 2021 there is no reason why anyone should lose their life as a result of a fire, and people need to be trained in order to achieve this goal. We here at the FPA also believe that businesses deserve protecting. Fire is a costly activity to a business and frequently can result in the total loss of a property and the end of business as you know it. This can also have a very negative effect on employment and the local economy. Over the last 5 years in the UK, there have been on average almost 550 large loss fire cases recorded per year. The reported median average cost of those fires has been approximately £220,000. However, roughly 8% or 1 in 12 of all the cases during this time cost over £1 million, and almost 1% of all the cases cost over £10 million. These statistics are taken from our FPA databases. I must add the caveat that not everyone reports all details about a fire, and we sincerely believe the true cost of fires to be much higher than this. These are substantial figures, and I ask you to consider how many of your businesses would survive a £220,000 loss. It can help focus on the benefit of training and help you justify the value linked to the expenditure. I know that many of you will be looking at the cost of training and then be looking at your budgets and wondering how the two will tally up. Training is often a resource that is cut back as far as it can legally go, with investment only taking place in the mandatory areas, particularly during a year when there has been a global pandemic. As a manager with over 40 years of experience of managing, coaching, mentoring and training staff, I would encourage you to look upon training investment as a long-term commitment to the health of your business. Go as far as is reasonably possible in making sure that your staff feel empowered to do the job that you want them to. Many of us in the fire sector are following the Grenfell Tower inquiry and acknowledge that without the proper training and acquisition of knowledge, it could so easily have been colleagues we know sat in the dock answering questions about how things have gone wrong. No business wants this for their staff. Whilst training will not provide all the answers to getting us to the place where we need to be competent, quality training will raise awareness of what is not acceptable, what is adequate, and what is best practice. It will provide you and your staff with the confidence to know what you should be doing and to have the conviction to challenge poor practice when this is encountered. The FPA has a wealth of talent available to you to tap into when it comes to training, and we sincerely want to share this with as many of you as possible. We hope that today's event helps to revitalise your enthusiasm for learning and development. We look forward to working with you and helping you achieve the very best in fire safety. Thank you and enjoy your day.
Good morning, my name is Jamie Wyatt and I am the FPA's Sales Account Executive. I am going to be hosting you on the virtual training day today. First up we have John Briggs, who is providing the welcome to the event.
A very warm welcome to all of you to the FPA's first virtual training open day. My name is John Briggs and I'm the FPA's Commercial Director. I also have the privilege of being a member of CFPA, which is the Confederation of FPAs in Europe, and I'm the Chairman of the Training Commission. We'll cover this in detail later on in the day. Due to our status as a CFPA member, this means that we're able to offer fire safety training that's recognised throughout Europe. We know that many of you are missing face-to-face learning and interaction that we are so proud of producing here at the FPA. So we've pulled together an exciting programme which will showcase our unique facilities that we have here in Gloucestershire. As an organisation, the Fire Protection Association serves to enhance fire safety competence and support our members and customers in raising the standards of fire prevention. As a provider of education, we seek to understand and respond to industry needs and to provide for the future training requirements of new talent and for current experts to enhance and update their knowledge and evidence their competence. We have been training delegates for over 40 years. In fact, training has always been one of the core services that the FPA has offered, allowing our experts to share their local knowledge and experience and contribute to raising the standards of fire prevention practices across the UK. The need for more competent fire safety professionals has never been greater in the UK. Those individuals with the knowledge, skills and integrity to provide fire safety solutions to owner-occupiers across a full range of premises. Our team of experts constantly seek to adapt our programmes and add value for our customers. The training department is arguably the section of the FPA that's best known and its busiest. To provide you with some of the high-level statistics, our team of trainers has over 200 years' experience between them. We train between 3,000 and 4,000 learners each year, and we deliver over 600 days of training. We really do take seriously our commitment to training and making sure you have the quality facilities to learn in. Since we started training, we have broadened the range of organisations we work with. We've become a recognised training provider for many well-known organisations such as the IFE and the IFSM. We've also invested financially into the infrastructure we have available. 7 years ago, we leased space from the Fire Service College where we're based to build 3 dedicated rooms to help learners really experience the types of materials, kit and systems they would see in a live scenario. We now deliver a combination of class-based, workshop-based and virtual training courses to meet the varied needs of our customers. Adapting to a number of digital platforms has been beneficial in making sure that those that are doing essential life safety work can continue to do so. So, moving on to today, what can you expect? We will show you all the courses we offer, and as many of these will be delivered in an interactive way as possible to showcase the unique facilities we have here. We will look into one of the main reasons why people undertake training with us, and that is to become a fire risk assessor. Fire risk assessment courses are by a long shot still our most popular course. We will have some interviews with individuals and companies that have undertaken training with the FPA to look at how they found the experience and how we were able to help solve the needs of their business. We will look at the different ways you can learn with us and provide you with an overview of the latest legal changes you need to be aware of in the fire safety world. Finally, we will have time during the day where you can ask your questions of our expert panel of trainers, be that something that you are currently working on and it has puzzled you, something you need clarification on with updated guidance, or simply their thoughts on what is next in the fire safety world. We would love for you to join in the discussion today. Please do ask questions of us, interact with us on social media and tell your friends and colleagues about the day. I do hope you enjoy the event and that we can welcome you here to the FPA in the near future.
Next up, we have Claire Wright, who is our Head of Training. Claire is going to provide you with an overview of the training courses we offer at the FPA.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Claire Wright and I'm the Head of Training at the FPA. The Fire Protection Association has an unrivalled reputation for delivering market-leading fire safety training and qualifications. All of our courses are recognised and approved by relevant third parties, including the Institute of Fire Safety Managers, the British Approvals for Fire Equipment, and the awarding body for building education. This provides you with the added reassurance that your training or qualifications will benefit you and your organisation. We are really pleased that over 90% of our delegates successfully pass our externally accredited courses. This is higher than the average training provider, and many delegates go on to complete higher level training and jobs as a result of attending one of our courses. We offer our public courses at a variety of locations, including London, Manchester, Scotland, and here in Gloucestershire. We pride ourselves on establishing close working relationships with our customers and developing unique and bespoke training programmes for a variety of sectors, including healthcare, the fire and rescue service, construction and entertainment. Many of our courses can be delivered on site at your premises, which my colleague Beata will discuss a bit later on today. Our ability to tailor courses to your business sector or to your particular premises means that organisations can benefit from our practical approach to learning in the workplace, particularly when it comes to keeping your property safe and your staff safe from the risks from fire. Clearly, over the past year, we've had to increasingly adapt to provide digital delivery options, offering a flexible solution to modern workplaces. And my colleague Katie will talk about these a bit later and talk you through the platforms that we use and how we do this. So, what courses do we offer? Our most popular suite of courses are to do with assessing and managing the risks from fire in the workplace. We offer an accredited route of training for those wishing to practice as fire risk assessors at level 3 and also at level 4. And we offer CPD courses for those who are already qualified but wishing to maintain competency or to develop their skills. All of our courses have the aim to help you navigate your workplace challenges and equip you to carry out your fire safety responsibilities more effectively. Whether this is managing fire safety in residential properties, looking after the building and the fire safety maintenance, or inducting new employees in your fire safety processes and procedures. Whatever your role and responsibilities regarding your workplace's fire safety, we will have a course or resources to suit your needs. In support of construction and maintenance functions, we offer a selection of more specialised courses, looking at specific fire safety systems and how premises are designed and how they are used. Passive fire protection, such as fire doors, compartmentation, through to looking after your sprinkler systems, your fire detection and alarm systems, and safe systems of work for undertaking temporary hot work. For those of you looking to support your own learning and stay up to date, but perhaps do not have the time or the resource to attend a formal training programme, consider becoming a member of the FPA. Annual membership will give you access to a wealth of resources published on our digital library, access to all our training videos, our webinars, and to keep you up to date with news and topical articles through our journal. FPA members who do wish to attend the training course or event will automatically receive a 10% discount. To finish, I would just like to say, not only is the FPA recognised and accredited for its training provision, but we're also proud to have achieved the Investors in People Award and ISO 9001 accreditation. Both of these awards demonstrate our commitment and investment to our people, our systems and our management, providing you with added security of knowing that you're engaging with a recognised product that has quality at its core, and that we operate with the aim of continuously seeking to exceed our customers' expectations. I hope that you enjoy the morning, and I look forward to speaking with you later and answering any of your questions in our Q&A session. I'll pass you over to Jamie.
We are now delighted to present you one of our longest serving trainers, Neil Chain. If you have visited us at one of our many events, the chances are you have seen Neil speak before. Today he is going to cover one of the most common questions: how do I become a fire risk assessor?
Becoming a fire risk assessor. The diagram that you see here is the fire risk assessment diagram, and it covers the means of escape principles around the hexagon on the outside and the fire prevention issues with the triangle of fire in the middle. But just a few words on myself. I joined the fire brigade back in Edinburgh in 1975, and after about 5 or 6 years I started carrying out some fire prevention inspections of small premises under the old section 28 of the Offices, Shops and Railway Premises Act, gradually developing into a fire safety inspecting officer of hotels and licensed premises in the early 80s. I moved away to West Midlands in the Wolverhampton Fire Safety Department in 1984, where I was in charge of a small team of inspecting officers covering hotels, large industrial units, where I stayed till 1986, when I moved on to Haverfordwest Fire Station in Dyfed, and I was more operational based when I was down there. However, in 1988, moved back to fire safety again as the Divisional Fire Prevention Officer in Grantham in Lincolnshire. I spent 3 years at the Fire Service College as an instructor in the School of Fire Safety Engineering, and in 1994 I moved back into Lincolnshire, where part of my duties till I retired in 2005 was in charge of fire safety for the brigade. Since joining the Fire Protection Association in 2005, I've been focusing on training, and after about 5 years with the training department, I also started carrying out fire risk assessments for the FPA's various clients, and I've been doing that since 2010 until present date. I also carry out quality assurance checks on other fire risk assessors' reports under our third-party accreditation system, under the BAFE SP205 system, so I'm still doing that to this date. So what are the roles and responsibilities of a fire risk assessor? When the first legislation hit the statute books in 2006, the discussions were that it was never intended to be a consultant's chapter. It was expected that employers would be able to carry out a fire risk assessment on their own premises by using the available guidance issued by the government, and record it themselves on their own particular template or one that's been produced by the government. However, increasingly more and more companies were looking for external consultants, both individuals and companies, to come and do their fire risk assessment for them, and also starting to look for third-party accreditation of the people that they were bringing in. So the external fire risk assessor could arguably be taking a chunk of legal responsibility there from the responsible person, so therefore compliance with the duties falling fair and squarely into their own responsibilities. Now, that degree of responsibility, legal responsibility, has been tested on quite a few occasions, and as you can see in the screen here, we've had some so-called fire risk assessors in serious trouble with the courts. One indeed ended up going to the Court of Appeal, where an 8-month prison sentence was handed out to a fire risk assessor who had carried out 2 fire risk assessments of local premises that he wasn't even too familiar with, charged £75 each for them, and the Court of Appeal stated that there was no doubt that the custody threshold had been passed, as the defendant had held himself out as someone who could carry out risk assessments and had no right to do so when he had taken no courses, had not read the legislation, and had not even been into the buildings concerned. The court indicated that there was a degree of dishonesty within the offences, and that the base point of 12 months imprisonment with a credit of 1/3 reduction for the guilty plea that had been entered was not wrong in principle and not manifestly excessive. That was in 2011, and more recently, a consultant who was an experienced former firefighter and from his own professional fire risk assessment organisation was told by a Crown Court judge that a custodial sentence was inevitable following a fire risk assessment of a nursing home which was not suitable and sufficient. The assessor was handed a sentence of 4 months in prison, suspended for 12 months for providing a woefully inadequate fire risk assessment in his capacity as a private consultant, and he also had to pay £1,600 in costs. So it's easy to see that a fire risk assessor could end up in serious trouble if he's not competent. So who is competent? A considerable number of well organised and very effective health and safety organisations who normally carry out health and safety based risk assessments have been asked by their clients to add fire risk assessment to their services. The evidence from delegates attending the Fire Protection Association's own various fire risk assessment courses over the last 15 years suggests that this is in fact the case. That said, numerous employers have been sending their own staff on such courses. Another fairly common fire risk assessor berth is the retired firefighter or fire officer, and many have a good depth of experience, have successfully made the transition from auditor to assessor and have become very competent fire risk assessors. However, there have also been some individuals who've started carrying out fire risk assessments, having served maybe 25 to 30 years with the local authority fire and rescue service, and have managed to dodge any fire safety rules in that time, however, becoming a fire safety consultant upon retiring from the fire service. I remember a conversation some years ago, having evaluated a very poor quality fire risk assessment carried out by a firefighter who'd retired early from his career, had never served in a fire safety role, and his previous fire and rescue service manager was heard saying, "In his 26.5 years, I've never managed to get one decent day's work out of him, and all of a sudden he's a fire safety consultant." Enough said. Now, there are competency schemes, and while there is no legal obligation to be on any competency register under the legislation, the fire law states, in fact, a person is to be regarded as competent where they have sufficient training and experience or knowledge and other qualities to enable them to assist undertaking the prevention and protective measures, and that will be assisting the responsible person. That said, many organisations have now decided they want a third-party accredited external fire risk assessor, and there are several schemes available to follow or to apply to. They can be based upon a company scheme or indeed an individual scheme. And you'll see on the screen here, we have the BAFE SP205 Company Certification Scheme. We have another scheme by the International Fire Consultants Certification Limited, which is a company certification scheme again. The Institute of Fire Prevention Officers, the Institute of Fire Safety Managers, Institution of Fire Engineers, they all run registration schemes based on the individual, and Warrington Test and Certification have approved accredited company and person certification schemes. So there are schemes out there if people want to actually follow that route. And remembering that also the Fire Sector Federation have published a guide to choosing a competent fire risk assessor, and we'll have a look at that a little bit later on. So a training course for a fire risk assessor, what should it cover? Well, as mentioned earlier, there have been documents issued regarding competence for fire risk assessors. One of the documents is now an approved code of practice, which is a national framework for fire risk assessor competency. Now, the actual subjects covered, and it should be included in any training course, has to include the assessment of risk from fire, the big picture in other words, the law and relevant guidance, the behaviour of fire in premises, human behaviour in fire, means of escape, fire prevention, passive fire protection, active fire protection, and very importantly, all the management aspects, because all the headings you see above management there will be completely worthless if there is not an effective management regime involved in a fire risk assessment. Now, how to gain experience after training? Well, in my basic journey through gaining experience over the last possibly 40 years is maybe initially attending a very simple fire risk assessment course for simple premises, and then initially a mentoring situation where you're shadowing a more experienced assessor to gain some experience that way. You would then branch out into carrying out your own fire risk assessments of small premises such as the odd shop, office, a nursery, small pub. Then you may be then moving on to a more advanced fire risk assessment course, and following that, starting to tackle larger, possibly non-sleeping risk type of accommodation, and ultimately moving on to sleeping accommodation, but maybe the smaller type of premises initially. More advanced training and possibly that starting to pursue an accreditation process should follow that, where following successfully maybe being accredited and maybe a bit more mentoring, they're able to tackle larger and more complex or high-risk premises. And in any case, everyone should be carrying out ongoing third-party checks on competence. Now, that can be through your accredited body or just having someone regularly checking your own reports that you produce. Now, just focusing on something quite topical at the moment, we have the fire safety and purpose-built blocks of flats, which recommend 4 different types of fire risk assessment. And the first one is called the Type 1, which is basically just having a non-destructive survey of the common areas of the flats, which is possibly the staircases, the corridors, and any shared accommodation. But they're not actually, if you like, removing things to have a look behind to see if there's some problems. A Type 2 common parts is now the same areas, common parts only, but we're now starting to maybe remove things to have a look at what's behind what is visible. And that could involve possibly lifting a ceiling tile, maybe removing a hinge from a door to see if there's appropriate materials behind it to assist with its fire resistance. Type 3 now moves into the flats themselves. Now, whereas the common parts are dealt with under the Type 2 and possibly a destructive inspection there, within the flats it's simply a look-see, and within the flat the chances are that this is beyond what the fire safety order covers, because flats, houses in general, are exempt from the fire safety order. Moving on to the most onerous type of survey would be the Type 4 survey, which means that not only are you doing a destructive or invasive survey of the common areas, you're also doing a destructive inspection of the flats as well, which of course is beyond what the fire safety order covers. Now that means that you could be maybe inspecting service shafts which are contained within the flat themselves, and looking at things like the level of fire detection and possibly internal fire doors within flats. So the different types of inspection vary from very straightforward visual inspection of the common parts right through to digging into the actual flats themselves, which may include the service shafts and any other fire safety aspects within the flat themselves. Now, regarding fire risk assessment templates, there is no obligation on the fire safety order to adopt any particular template. What must be recorded is as detailed as the prescribed information and the fire safety arrangements. And there are a number of different templates available, one of which is PAS 79. It's a publicly available specification. It's currently in 2 parts. That said, the 2020 second part, which covers housing, has been temporarily suspended to do some amendments to it. But part 1 is any premises other than housing, and it provides a fully detailed methodology of recording the fire risk assessment. Of course, any third-party fire risk assessor, including the Fire Protection Association, can provide their own template for the fire risk assessment, which can be, altered to a certain extent to suit the client's own demands, and it can be based upon simple Word document or indeed some sort of a cloud-based electronic basis. But as long as the recording and the details recorded cover the prescribed information, which is of course your hazards, the measures that are already in place to control the hazards, and any additional actions that are going to be recommended, along with identifying any persons at risk, especially at risk, that is. In addition to that, the fire safety arrangements, which is the planning and organising and reviewing aspects of the fire risk assessment, must also be recorded. So the recommendations made in a fire risk assessment, here's just a rough idea as to what the contents, the sections might be within a fire risk assessment. Obviously, we'd have a general introduction describing the premises, and then it would move into identifying the significant hazards, or the significant findings as they're called, and identifying persons especially at risk. But before making any additional recommended measures, you have to take into account the existing measures, when they're divided quite simply into 3 areas of existing preventive measures, existing protective measures, and existing measures to assist evacuation. So where you've identified a hazard or a person at risk where there's a potential for harm to be caused, if the measure already in place does not quite fit the bill, then what we're looking at here is making a recommended additional measure, a measure still to be taken. And along with that, there would have to be some sort of recommendation on the timescale for implementation of it. Now, the timescales themselves we'll discuss shortly, but in addition to the main body of the report, you would also expect to find some sort of conclusions. They could take the form of a summary, and it may appear at the end of the report or even at the beginning of the report. But it also must look forward to the review of the fire risk assessment and implementation of all the various recommended additional measures. Photographs are also frequently a good idea to add a bit value to the significant hazards that have been identified during the fire risk assessment. So the levels of residual risk that need realistic timeframes attached to them, they can be identified in a number of different ways. They can be subject to a scoring system to identify whether they need to be implemented very quickly or over the longer term. And that might be involving a scoring system with a matrix. It could be a traffic light system. It could simply be a date to be completed by and who might be responsible for it. Ultimately, though, no matter what system's adopted, it's actually critical that the review of the fire risk assessment is carried out regularly to make sure that all these recommended actions are being implemented, and indeed keeping an eye on the existing situation so that any measures that are already in place have not had less than the required level of attention. Now, a fire risk assessor must maintain their competence, and if you're a third-party fire risk assessor and you have a third-party accreditation, for instance, I am personally with the Institute of Fire Safety Managers, where I'm a Tier 3 assessor, which means I can be let loose on high-risk premises. I'm also on the Institution of Fire Engineers accredited fire risk assessors list, and just a few days ago I spent a few hours completing my 2-yearly Register of Fire Risk Assessors periodic review. There's two main parts to that. One is identifying some recent fire risk assessments I've carried out, and the IFE will wish to look at one of them, and a list of all my continuing professional development activities, which is based over the last 24 months, and it will identify things like delivering training, developing courses, reading new legislation and guidance, and of course carrying out fire risk assessments of a variety of different premises. So that's a short introduction to becoming a fire risk assessor. So what I could suggest is that if you stick to what's been discussed today, then we can stay out of jail as a fire risk assessor. So thank you for your attention, and any questions I'm sure you can put to the session leader.
Next up, we have Tasmin, our training administrator, who will provide you all of the key information about our CFPA diploma in fire prevention.
My name is Tasmin Duty, and I'm one of the training administrators here at the FPA. Today I'm going to talk to you about our industry recognised qualification, the CFPA Diploma in Fire Prevention. CFPA stands for Confederation of Fire Protection Associations in Europe, of which the FPA is a member, and we're the only provider of this qualification in the UK. This prestigious qualification is recognised Europe-wide throughout the 19 member countries of the CFPA. Essentially, the Diploma of Fire Prevention was developed to bridge the gap between completing a fire risk assessment training course and undertaking a full-time degree in fire safety. The typical people we have undertaking this qualification are fire safety professionals, safety managers, fire risk assessors, fire engineers, and building safety managers. It's an ideal qualification if you're looking to separate yourself from the crowd as a fire risk assessor and hold responsibility for improving fire policy and strategy within the workplace. It's split into two parts, a technical cycle and the management cycle. The technical cycle takes approximately 6 to 24 months to complete, and it comprises of a 5-day fire risk assessment fundamental principles course, the completion of 7 independent study units that can be chosen from a variety of subjects, and a 3-hour written examination. As part of this cycle, you will have an expert tutor to assist you through the duration of the course, access to the FPA's online resource library to help you with your independent study, and written feedback on each study unit. Once you have completed the technical cycle, you are then eligible to apply for the management cycle. The management cycle consists of 10 days of learning and the submission of a fire strategy for your organisation. The management cycle covers key aspects such as broader management issues flowing from fire protection issues, understanding the principles of fire engineering design, and improved awareness of the testing and maintenance of fire protection and suppression equipment, and a greater understanding of how to manage risk in complex premises. One of the questions we get asked frequently about this qualification is, how long does it take to do? One of the benefits of the diploma is that it's a flexible qualification, and the aim is for you to be able to build it around your existing commitments. Some people have had a career break and are able to complete it in a few months. Others, more commonly, will undertake it over the course of a year alongside their existing work commitments. If you're considering completing the CFPA diploma or require more information about the content of the course, please get in touch and a member of our training team will be more than happy to assist.
We will now bring you another one of our most experienced trainers, Mike Floyd. Mike can train on many aspects of fire safety, and today he is going to chat to Claire Crisp about our passive fire safety courses.
Hi, I'm Claire Jarrett and I'm one of the fire safety trainers at the FPA. I'm in the building studies room, which is great for hands-on training. The courses I'm involved with are fire warden training, agricultural fire awareness and passive fire protection. Let me tell you a little bit about the Passive Fire Protection Foundation course. This course is at an introductory level, which takes the subject of passive fire protection and breaks it down into easily understandable chunks. We start by looking at what passive fire protection is, which is essentially the fire protection elements in a building that contain the fire and prevent it from spreading further. To really understand this topic, we look at building design, compartmentation, and how fire-resisting elements are used to separate spaces into fire compartments. We then delve into fire, what it is and how it spreads, and finally we combine all of these and study how fire moves around a building and how we can prevent it from spreading by using fire-stopping products. The main people who would benefit from this training are anyone in buildings or facilities management, contractors, electricians, fire risk assessors, or those who simply wish to develop their knowledge of compartmentation, fire spread and passive fire stopping products. For those who already have a base level knowledge of this area, we'd recommend the next level up, which is our 2-day Passive Fire Protection Intermediate Level course, which is run by my colleague Mike Floyd.
Thanks, Claire. And now we're going to briefly discuss our 2-day Intermediate Fire Safety Passive course, the C18, and we're hoping that a number of different roles will find that suitable. So it can be risk assessors, trying to get a little bit more knowledge than the basic passive understanding, with people managing other staff. It could be, say, building managers of a facilities team, and as anyone topping up their knowledge, getting CPD on passive systems. We do have a good look at that. So that's the area we're aiming at, and we will have a good look at the foundations of passive, and we'll also look at some specific examples of systems in the building, in our big demonstration area, and really cover a good broad spectrum of those issues. In terms of problems and myths, there are many issues on passive safety where things are got wrong. So our 2 modules we're going to discuss later are the key areas. So passive stopping systems and fire doors have got the most myths attached to them. So we've got strange ideas like you don't fill very small holes. There's a very long-standing myth about 40mm holes in walls, etc. That's one that comes up all the time. And with fire doors, there's misunderstanding about seal systems, misunderstanding about user-friendliness, times of closing, how hard it's to open a door, and many doors are unfriendly to operate. So that's the sort of area we're looking at. But within the main part of the passive area, we're looking at compartmentation, how we get our compartments properly set with linear gap seals, with through services, appropriately tested barriers. And another huge area of misunderstanding in that section is cavity barriers. People think cavity barriers are a part of compartmentation. They're a separate issue. And so cavity barriers is a separate special area we look at within our special modules. So on those 2 special modules, so we do look at for 1 day fire doors and fire door systems. And principally we're trying to get people with enough knowledge through that addition to a fundamental passive course or the C18 to carry that knowledge through and look at just fire doors to a point whereby they could fill in a full fire door appraisal and give a short professional report on a fire door in all the areas that it would need to be looked at. Secondly, our passive fire stopping course, so our second module. Again, we would show all the typical fire stopping systems that go with the C18 course and take that issue further and look at particularly very fast fit systems for cabling. Many clients want clean, fast fitting systems for cabling rather than our traditional bat and sealant systems, which are very messy and slow. And again, pipe systems have got cleaner, faster, so many people doing upgrades of pipe work can also benefit from that area. But we'd also mention the traditional systems on the way, but say principally more and more persons want a clean, upgradable, fast-fix system, fully third-party certified, that can be added to more and more in the future and doesn't have the drawbacks of the older systems we've been used to in the past. We would like people to do a foundation course ideally if they've got very small amount of knowledge in passive systems, but if you have got a bit more knowledge and you just wish to expand that on from a very basic foundation, the CA team will be ideal for you, but do talk to the training team about that to make sure we have got the balance right. Once you've done those 2 courses, we then can ideally take you to the modules at that stage. The benefit of doing that is we can then, if you do take either of the 2 modules, award you one of our CFPA e-certificates, which is where the partnership of all the FPAs in Europe do training on a framework, and we've got an agreement that that level of training covers that certificate, whereby you'd be fit to give a short report on a fire door and a short report on fire stopping. Is it vaguely fit for purpose? And that's the point of that level of training. We're not making people competent persons such as fire us. We're giving them the good foundation knowledge to properly inspect things and say obviously if it's faulty, and also if it's got absolutely sound installation points to it, following a third-party format of report. And then, as I say, any of those things, do talk to a training team in depth for giving the right advice for that. I say, but that's the typical format we'd like you to follow. Thank you.
We will now move on to one of our most popular courses, the Fire Warden Training, with Russell Pratt, one of our trainers.
Hi, my name's Russell Pratt and I'm one of the FPA trainers. I've spent 15 years in Oxfordshire Fire and Rescue Service and joined the FPA a little under 5 years ago. You will usually find me training on fire warden courses, extinguisher and alarm and detection courses. I travel throughout the UK and do this on site or at your premise at various locations that we undertake and our scheduled open courses. The training I'm going to talk to you about today is our fire warden training. This training is the most familiar training associated with fire. Chances are if you talk to someone about fire in the workplace, they've done this course or something similar. So why do you need to have a fire warden training, and why do so many people do this? The Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order, or RRO, identifies a responsible person who has control for preventing and protecting fire safety measures. A fire risk assessment is obliged to be carried out on a premise that has 5 or more employees. It needs to be recorded and available for local authorities to view. As part of a fire risk assessment, the responsible person can appoint 1 or more competent persons to assist them in implementing a fire safety measure. This is where a fire warden comes in, essentially as an assistant to help the main person with the fire safety responsibilities. If you are not sure who's the responsible person within your organisation, it's worth finding out. It's usually a fire safety manager, health and safety manager, or perhaps a maintenance or facilities manager. Clearly, depending on the size of the building or the work of the organisation, the fire warden role is essential. The FPA's fire warden training fulfils the part of the legislation that states people assisting the responsible person must be competent. The content of the fire warden training essentially achieves what the fire safety order states the responsible person must do. This being, they must nominate competent persons to implement those measures and ensure that the number of such persons, their training and the equipment available to them is adequate, taking into account the size and the specific hazards involved in the premises concerned. This can be an area of ambiguity when it comes to training, as it does not specify exactly what the training should consist of. Lots of people ask if fire warden training is mandatory. It is mandatory, but the form that it takes is open to interpretation. Many organisations either simply do not have the space, time or means to ensure that fire wardens are able to set off and use a live extinguisher. But if you are expected to do this for real, then the FPA would always advocate staff having a go at this to practice in this training session. That said, this is one of the most adaptable training courses as it needs to be, and that its flexibility designed by legislation. No one organisation has the same building, staff or risks So when we train on this course, I need to ensure that it is tailored to your business needs, which we do as part of a pre-course consultations. What are some of the core components this course covers then? It sets out the actions to take in the incident of a fire, such as raising the alarm, notifying the emergency services and evacuating the building. All of these things are important, but we often use the example of if your entire building burnt down, for the sake of a small electrical fire, this would be very unfortunate. So another aspect of this course is training you on the safe use of a fire extinguisher, which could help save your building and lives. We look at things such as identifying the different types of extinguishers, how to use them, which ones to use on different fires, what the outside of the extinguisher tells us, environmental considerations for when we are training, which extinguishers you can and cannot set off. As well as dealing with the fire, if it should occur, this course will importantly tell you the types of things you can do on a regular basis to ensure that your organisation is most prepared in the situation of a fire. For example, simple regular maintenance checks you can do on your fire extinguishers. Checking the escape routes are clear and easily accessible and free of any obstructions. Reporting hazards that could cause a fire to the responsible person. I hope this short introduction has provided you with an insight into the FPA's fire warden training and why it's so important for your business. We would love to help as many of you as we can with the interactive and enjoyable training, so do get in touch.
Next up, we have Katie Baldwin speaking with Robbie Shuttleworth, who has undertaken one of our Abbey qualifications in fire risk assessment.
Hi, my name's Katie Baldwin. I work as the Training Operations Manager for the FPA in the Training Department. I'd also like to introduce Robbie Shuttleworth, who's a fire risk assessor and works for PQRM Limited. Firstly, let's start by giving a brief overview of what our Level 3 and Level 4 qualifications are. These qualifications have been developed to build on what Neil was discussing earlier. One of the main reasons delegates undertake training with the FPA is to become a competent fire risk assessor. In many contexts, our training courses alone are sufficient to be able to do this, but in some contexts, if a learner is starting from scratch, or if a person is taking on full responsibility for fire safety within their organisation, they may require a greater depth of understanding, and this is where our Abbey courses come in. The Level 3 certificate has 4 units, which look at communication and relationship management, the principles of a fire risk assessment, planning and organising, and the risk assessment itself. The Level 4 certificate builds on the work of the Level 3 certificate and has a further 2 units to complete with more advanced principles and concepts, and another more comprehensive fire risk assessment.
Okay, so we'll have a chat with Robbie now and we'll just ask a few questions to see how he's found it so far. So let's talk a little bit more about you, Robbie, your career and your role now within your company. Could you let me know what you do and how it is you have come to do this within your organisation?
So as you said, I'm a fire risk assessor for a small company specialising in fire safety consulting called PQRM Limited. They're based in Scotland and I'm based down in London, and I'm relatively new to the industry. So within my role, I'm currently undertaking fire risk assessments and building up my experience down here with the support of my senior manager. As far as how I came to do this, it was actually a complete career 180. In the second half of last year, I left a career in chefing to pursue one in fire safety, and ultimately my goal is to complete a degree in fire engineering.
So can you tell me why you were interested in undertaking the Abbey qualifications in the first place, or did you consider at all doing a more basic course? How did you kind of make the decision to take the Abbey qualification route?
Yeah, so as far as other courses go, this was very much a starting point for me going in and doing the Unit 2 class-based week at Morton in Marsh. But I did receive some foundation training at my workplace when I first started for PQRM. But I specifically sought out an Abbey qualification through the FPA because I felt it was really important that my training's structured and accredited rather than otherwise.
Okay, so how did you find the information available and the help and advice to ensure you were getting the right learning for you?
So it was actually quite simple for us to choose the FPA. So we did search available courses, but PQRM is a member of the FPA. So in looking at those, we decided that the FPA provided the best, was best suited for my needs.
Brilliant. Thank you. So what aspects have you found most enjoyable so far?
I'd say I really enjoyed the class-based Unit 2 week that I mentioned earlier in Morton and Marsh at the FPA headquarters. It was really informative and enjoyable learning, but more specifically, I enjoyed actively working in the syndicate with a wide array of people from different professional backgrounds and industries. And then also, after working on problems and tasks we were given, discussing our ideas and our solutions with the wider class and the other groups. It was a really fun way to learn, to be honest.
Good, that's really good to know, Robbie. Were there any parts you felt were more challenging for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I would consider the Unit 2 assignment, which was putting a fire risk assessment report together, quite challenging, because you take in so much information, you learn so much on that week's course, it can seem quite daunting to put that into practice and put it on paper straight away. However, you go away with the learning, but you also go away with quite a thick workbook that has all the information in it and all your worked examples. So when you remember that the information is in that, it is really quite manageable. The other thing that I would consider quite challenging was, as a wider part of my L3, outside the Unit 2, Unit 1 and 3, I had to put together a portfolio, which I found a little bit daunting, but especially because I'd never done anything like that before. However, the guys at the FPA were always on hand to give you any help, whether it's via email or a quick chat on the phone, kind of no matter how many times you might have already phoned them that day, as I'm sure you know, Katie.
It's no problem. Okay, that's brilliant. I'm glad you're finding it okay. So what is the impact the course has had on your work? Is there anything you can now do or do differently?
I mean, yeah, definitely. As I said, I was completely new to the industry before my Unit 2 Fire Risk Assessors course in November last year. But since then, I've undertaken dozens of fire risk assessments, initially under supervision and guidance with my manager, but now I have the confidence and more knowledge to approach new clients, carry out fire risk assessments on their behalf, provide them with advice. Another great thing is it teaches you is I know where to look for appropriate information for all sorts of premises that I might not have off the top of my head via the guidance or the workbook that I've got, and it has also just pushed me even more to pursue my degree by going on getting my level 4 full diploma and hopefully successfully applying to university in September. So it's changed quite a lot, really.
Okay, and finally, if you could provide some advice for someone thinking of moving into a career like yourself in fire safety, and what would this advice be?
Yeah, so I'd probably recommend 3 things. I'd say firstly ensure you do it in a planned and structured way. So have short, medium and long-term goals, because there's a lot you can do in the industry. Make sure you get a good blend of accredited training and practical experience. And lastly, make sure you've got a good mentor who can teach you within your day-to-day activities, but also help you work within your abilities as they grow.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your feedback with us, and we wish you all the best in your career going forward, and thank you again.
We are now going to welcome one of our guest speakers, Nick Coombe, from the National Fire Chiefs Council. Nick is going to give an overview of the Fire Safety Bill with a focus on how this will affect your role moving forward.
Hi, my name's Nick Coombe. And I'm representing the National Fire Chiefs Council, which is the professional voice of the Fire and Rescue Service. And today I'm going to talk about the Fire Safety Bill and its impact on competence in the industry. So, the Fire Safety Bill is clarifying that the structure and external wall, front doors, other doors and balconies should be part of the fire risk assessment for residential buildings. The bill is in its final stages. In fact, it's been today, in April is being through the Commons and the Lords, and there is a tabled amendment that has assured that statutory guidance will be issued to assist the responsible person, the fire risk assessor and the enforcing authorities in implementation, and I'll be discussing that a bit later in this presentation. So what are the key issues of the bill? Well, it basically includes 1.7 million residential properties, because the definition is any premises that has more than one dwelling. It'll have an impact on the capacity and competence in the market for fire risk assessors and those that can assess external walls. It also brings in structure into the definition, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And we also will require, fire risk assessors will require access to check balconies and front doors, and this may have some implications as well. So how will the 1.7 million impact on competence? Well, these are not new premises, but these are premises that would not have considered their external wall systems or balconies in their fire risk assessment. And this will need a range of competency depending on the type of building and the type of external wall. This obviously has implications for capacity. There are a limited number of people who can assess the more complex external walls, and also there are limited a number of people that are competent to assess the more higher risk premises. So if you get a combination of a higher risk premises and a complex external wall, this again will have a real impact on the capacity. So what the Home Office has tried to do is when the Fire Safety Bill is introduced, they are going to issue a guidance which talks about how you can assess your external wall, and also a toolkit. The toolkit is essentially for large housing providers who have a very large portfolio, who may be wondering which buildings do I do my fire risk assessment first. And so the toolkit and guidance will assist them in deciding which buildings should be prioritised for their fire risk assessment. It doesn't look at the actual external wall, it actually looks at the premises and decides which ones you should be considering first based on risk. There'll be a number of questions in the toolkit, you know, how tall, how high, what it's got on the external wall, how many staircases, what type of fire risk assessment, etc., etc. And obviously it's meant to be a bit of a for an asset manager to sit in their office and do it from a kind of desktop. So there'll be a number of questions where you might not know the answer to, and the toolkit has factored that in. So it may move buildings where you don't know a lot about further up the priority risk rating. There's been a lot of talk about external wall systems on residential, but what about other buildings? We have hospitals, care homes and other high-risk buildings that may have combustible external walls, and these have got to be considered. It's quite well known that external wall systems have not been considered as part of a fire risk assessment for almost any building, not just residential. I think the clarification of the Fire Safety Bill is about residential, but we've always been clear that the external wall is part of commercial buildings fire risk assessment, or part of the legislation, let's say that, but hasn't always been considered part of the fire risk assessment, and this needs to be done in the future. So how will the external wall system now coming in have an impact on competence? As I said previously, you know, there are different skill levels required on who can access your external wall. You may have seen some of the issues we've had around the EWS 1 form that was introduced by the government and RICS to try and ease this issue. This didn't, you know, as had mixed results, I suppose, is trying to be polite. You know, I think it was a very well-intentioned route, but probably hasn't had a success that people thought. So the government has commissioned a PAS, a publicly available specification 9980, which has just gone out for consultation this month. That's going to be a methodology for a fire risk appraisal and assessment on external walls that have combustible materials. It will be a single kind of methodology that allows people to assess it all consistently, and therefore we should, with the right competent people, get the right results on each building, so we don't have these different kind of assessments that you might have seen in the press, where one building's had 3 EWS1 forms, all done by different people, all coming up with different levels of what that risk is on that building. So this methodology hopefully will cure that. Again, though, it will talk about the competency of people who can undertake this methodology, and therefore it will hope that only the right people with competence can do it. But this is a limited number of people, which I think will have an impact on people trying to get these assessments done. You've also got PAS 79 Part 2, which unfortunately is not for sale at the moment, but is still live. It's not been withdrawn. And this again addressed the risk on what I would say is low risk buildings. For example, you know, an A and B looks like a house, you know, flat A, flat B. Technically, this will, well, not technically, legally, this will require a EWS assessment as part of the fire risk assessment. Now, a competent fire risk assessor should be able to look at that brick and tile and make that decision that, you know, there is no significant risk from the external wall on this type of building. And then, of course, at the other spectrum, you've got a, you know, a fully, you know, clad building, you know, 40 or 50 stories high, with different combinations of external wall systems, you know, that needs a professional, competent person who can assess not just what's on the building, but how them different combinations of systems may, you know, be affected by fire. So, doors and how they will impact on competence. So, front doors of flats have always been considered as part of the fire risk assessment, and other communal doors, such as doors onto the staircases. However, the clarification was meant to be needed, so you know, doors have been clarified that they are definitely part. And there are a range of doors across the many years that we've had in high-rise buildings, from timber to composite, you know, what we call notional doors, glazing indoors, be it fire-resisting glazing or not in some cases. Many of the older doors will have no markings or paperwork, so you'll have to have an assessment by a competent person to decide what the risk that door is. I'm worried that there will be a risk-averse approach that there seems to have been in the industry because of some of the external factors, PI insurance, etc., that we are being much more risk-averse when carrying out our fire risk assessments. And I'm worried that where there is no paperwork or no markings, the easy option will be just replace. And this could cost, you know, industry, you know, responsible persons a significant amount of money. So I'm hoping that competent people who know about fire doors, know about their roles, know how effective they are, you know, like notional fire doors, will make that, you know, competent judgment that a door is fit for purpose, you know, even if it's not, you know, has no markings and has no paperwork attached to it. We've seen a lot of fire door competence schemes, which, you know, may be a good thing, but I do worry about this kind of risk-based approach that, you know, again, without the markings, without the perfectness of fire doors, that people will, you know, will react to replace, replacing the whole door frame, etc., full kit. which will be very, very expensive. I think we need to be pragmatic so we get an holistic approach to safety with limited resources available out there, limited money in a lot of social housing. You know, could that money you might spend on 15,000 doors be better used for things like suppression systems? Obviously, if a door is not fit for purpose, then it needs to be replaced. But just not having paperwork or markings, in my opinion, is not a reason to replace it. If it's good, solid wood, fits in the hole correctly, no obvious gaps, closes correctly, etc., then it will have some decent level of resistance that may help, keep the fire at bay. And just because it's not got the plug in it or you can't find any paperwork, it needs replacing. I'm worried that we might go down that route. With the introduction of structure, this has brought a whole new string to the bow of what a fire risk assessor has. A fire risk assessor now may have to consider the structure. And how will they assess this? It's not, obviously available to see. You don't see the pillars and the columns, etc. So this is a difficult one. Will further training and qualification need? Who is actually competent to check this? Again, it's another additional cost. And more importantly, how will this work in practice? I think if you're looking in a riser and you see some steel work that doesn't seem to have any protection, you could raise that as a fairly competent risk assessor. But it'd be very, very difficult unless you are, a structural engineer who knows far more about this than I do, be able to give that assessment. And I think this is where we need to be very careful what the definition of structure is in the change in the fire safety bill. So again, one of the things it's bringing in is balconies and front doors. We talked about front doors as well, but they have an impact on, how you're going to do this as a fire risk assessor. How are you going to get access? Those of you who have carried out fire risk assessments, you may have had difficulty gaining access during the day. So now you have to gain access not only to check the front door correctly. Now you probably were doing this on a sample basis, and hopefully sampling will still be the norm rather than every single door, because I think that will take so long otherwise. But it's now you've got to allow the person who lives in that flat to allow you to go into the balcony and check it. Yes, you can do some external verification by walking around the building and having a look at what's on the outside of the buildings and making some general comments on your risk assessment. But it's not just talking about what the loading is on the balcony, it's actually talking about what the balcony is actually constructed of. Has it got timber flooring, timber rails, glazing, etc., and what is the impact on that if there's a fire, not only on that particular balcony or that flat, but balconies below and above. And again, this will take more and more time, more and more of a fire risk assessor's time, more and more time for them that will push the cost up, and also about how many do they sample, how many access do they go, what happens if they miss one, and something happens, because there is this kind of risk averse that, a fire risk assessment should see everything all the time, rather than the kind of pragmatic, holistic approach. If you want a job done properly, you need to get the competent people who are effective in all this kind of stuff, and it will cost you, but in the long run you do get what you pay for. And this is why things like third-party schemes, third-party accreditation is really important. These are your kind of guarantees for your, as an RP, to ensure you are getting the right types of people to do your job. Which leads me on to this. Are we moving to an age where one person cannot do a fire risk assessment in a complex building? Will it need to be a team of people? Would it need to be people who know about structure, know about external walls, know about doors, etc.? You know, is this where we're moving to? You know, in this new world of how a fire risk assessment is being deemed to see. We must strive for third-party accreditation. You know, this is you know, third-party fire risk assessment registers are really important. Third-party products really important. As I said before, this is an RP's way of showing due diligence. You know, we should be pushing this at all points, that if you are going to employ competent people, you should be trying to get them off registers if them registers exist. If they don't exist, then they should be made, because I think, you know, being an RP, you've got, you know, especially in social housing, you've got a number of other issues you need to contend with, fire safety being just one of them, an important one, but only one of the very things you have to deal with. And it would make life easier for you if you had a register of people you could go to that gives you that kind of confidence that they're going to get the job done and get the job done well. I do worry with, you know, with this kind of thing where one person cannot do it. Are we going to drive people from the industry? And that's before we're even talking about you know, public indemnity insurance, etc., etc. All the stuff that's coming on around the PAS for building safety managers, the BSI Flex 8670, which is the competence for individuals. There is so much going on at the moment, you know, that, you know, trying to keep up as an RP is really difficult. It's hard keeping up for someone like myself who is in this industry. It is such a fast-paced, changing thing. You know, the Grenfell Tower inquiry, every day there are more shocks coming out about what was or was not done, and we're trying to listen to that, trying to get in front of the curve and trying to ensure that we are you know, ahead of the game to ensure that our people are safe and our premises are safe. Thank you. That ends my presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it. Competence is, you know, to finish off, competence is a key element. If you can ensure the people you employ, the services you provide are done by competent people, then that is your kind of due diligence. I'm not saying that if you get everyone off a third-party register using third-party products that things might not go wrong, but when you are asked what you did, it's much better to have them questions that you sought competent people from recognised registers, recognised third-party approved and installers, and therefore you did what was reasonably the best you can do in them circumstances. And that's all you can do as a responsible person. So thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
I am now going to hand back to Russell Pratt, who is going to talk to you about our alarm, detection and lighting courses.
Hello again. Next thing I'm going to talk to you today about is the fire detection, alarm and emergency lighting system courses we have at the FPA. Our courses have been designed for those new to the fire detection and alarm sector, and we have created an interactive training room where you can actually learn, experience and test a variety of leading manufacturers' systems and experience real life common service and maintenance scenarios. Not only will the course deliver the practical guidance for carrying out installation, commissioning and maintenance of systems, but we will have a complete understanding of the relevant legislation and the standards BS 5839 and 6266. The FPA is not affiliated to any one provider, so our courses are ideal for those working within a variety of different suppliers. We also ensure that our class size for this course remains small to enable you to have the time, opportunity to ask all the questions you need from the trainer and get a more one-to-one learning. The typical people that come on the course include maintenance and facilities staff, consultants, technicians, vendors and estimators, and building managers. And we also run specific courses for those responsible for system design and those responsible for investigating if a system is fit for purpose. The course, while still using the practical facilities, will also bring into the building plans other networks and connectivity and design drawings. Many suppliers will provide you with a very comprehensive free of charge training and support on their systems, which is welcomed and the FPA would completely endorse undertaking bespoke training for your role. Having said this, there are several different types of systems out there, and the technology changes at a rapid rate. So if you ever feel that you need more training or support in making sure that you are competent to do your job, then these courses offer you a flexibility and practical solution. I will now talk to you about some of the practical elements of this course. So as part of the course, the technicians will come into the practical side of the workshop. As we said previously, there is a lot of different manufacturers' panels, and we're lucky enough that a lot of manufacturers support the FPA in providing this workshop. During this workshop sessions, delegates will actually learn the differences between panels. So we have our conventional panels, and they will understand how to wire these and find faults with them when they occur. We then go to our addressable panels, and again, our engineers learn exactly how to wire these panels up and the fault finding associated with them. In addition to that, then our colleagues or delegates will go into their practical booths, and they will cable and wire a panel up to a smoke detector, a heat detector and a manual cool point, and actually learn how to cable them correctly and how to fault find any issues that they may come across. So under the British standards, it's not just about actually training a technician how to wire a system. We have to maintain it. Every 6 months we have to visit our client's premise, and we have to test that system in its entirety. So we talk about the different methods we can test systems with. So whether it's being with a manual smoke or a heat pole, to actually test those devices, our panel will respond accordingly. So in addition to our lower level smoke detectors, our ionisation and our optical smokes and heat detectors, we might be confronted with natrium, for instance, and we discuss the other options that are available. Things like our Scorpion self-test. This is a unit that is actually operated by a remote device, and we can program this to actually inject some smoke into the detector and then suck it back out afterwards once the device is actually operated. In addition to our Scorpion unit, we talk about VESDAs, which is an air sampling unit which is based upon these pipelines, and these are specific for computer suites or specialist areas, and monitor and sample the air. We then cover things like our door closers that are wired into some of the different alarm panels here. We look at other options for reception areas which may be more attractive to have in a reception area than a large fire alarm panel. We talk about emergency lighting and the different options, whether they're self-contained or monitored and managed systems. This, for instance, with this panel, we can actually program it to test at certain times of the day, as under the British standard requirements. And the latest technology that comes out under the British standards now, BS 8629, tells us in Scotland under the building regs that any residential property over 18 metres requires an evacuation panel, and this panel is there then designed purely for the fire service to actually be able to operate an evacuation should they wish on a particular single floor. So I hope you've had enjoyed the brief overview of our workshop area that we use to train our technicians. If you want to find out any more, why not get in touch and come and book on one of our courses.
To start this section, I am going to hand over to Katie Baldwin, who is our Training Operations Manager. Katie is going to talk you through how you can find information about our courses, book them, and the sort of platforms and methods we use for undertaking our training courses.
When booking courses with us, you can do this via the website. Please navigate to the Training tab and then find the course category that the course you're looking for may sit within. From here, find the course that you would like to attend and click View Details. Here, you will find a course overview. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can view course availability, costs excluding VAT and location. Simply click the Book button if you are paying with a credit or debit card. We also accept purchase orders. If this is your preferred method of payment, please download and complete our interactive booking form and then send to the email on screen, training@thefpa.co.uk. When you have successfully made a booking with us, you will receive an email from the training department, which is automated and will look like this. This is your course joining instructions and will contain all the necessary information you require prior to the course start date. Please be aware that these emails can fall into your junk or spam folder because it is an automated email from our system. You will also receive an invoice upon booking. This is a preview of what your invoice should look like. As you can see, there is an amount outstanding. I have chosen to use the payment method which utilises a purchase order. You can see that the purchase order is quoted on the invoice here, 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D. When you arrive at the FPA entrance, you will need to head towards the gatehouse where the security team are based. Once you have been allowed through the gates, if you are driving, you will need to take the second left into the P1 visitors car park. You may stay here for the duration of your course. Before arriving in the administration block where you will find the college reception, please ensure that you are wearing a mask, and this is the same for any of the communal areas around the college site. This is also dependent on the current government guidance. Please wait in reception. One of the college reception team will greet you and advise you on where to be for the FPA's courses. One of our team will then greet you, sign you in, and take your temperature. Again, dependent on the current government guidance. We will then direct you to refreshments and finally escort you to the training room. We do have an online learning platform called Moodle. Moodle is used across most of our courses. Depending on the course you book, you will be sent a login to Moodle from our third-party provider Hubkin. On Moodle, you will be able to access course materials, reference guides, and exercises or assessments. This will be your dashboard view. Once logged into Moodle, you will find any courses that you are enrolled on here. This is our Unit 2, which forms part of our Level 3 Certificate Fire Risk Assessment qualification. There is a multiple choice questionnaire and an area where you should upload your completed report. Upon successful completion of your course, you will receive results and/or certification within up to 4 weeks post-course or post-assessment. This is an example of one of our FPA certificates. When issued, they are sent by email to the email address that you have registered with us. If there are times where we are unable to deliver face-to-face training, we are quickly able to adapt to an online training method. We use a platform called Zoom. Upon booking a course, you will be sent a link to Zoom. You will use this link on the start day of your course. You can access Zoom by downloading the app or using your browser. We can share our screen with you so that you are able to view the PowerPoint presentation as you would in a classroom training course. Essentially, we are all here to help. We are a small team, so often if you have requirements or needs such as incorporating company policies, payment plans, or training spread over a period of time to accommodate shift workers, we will do our best to help with these elements so we can ensure the training works in the best way for your organisation. Any questions you have, we are always happy to help.
Ian Walters is up next. Ian is one of our principal consultants and will talk to you about our sprinkler training courses and the fantastic practical facilities we have in our fire testing laboratory.
Welcome everyone to the FPA. My name is Ian Walters and I'm one of the technical consultants who specialises in sprinkler systems, and I therefore teach on some of the sprinkler training courses. I will shortly be walking around the practical training facilities we have at the FPA. However, before I do, I wanted to talk to you about some of our main sprinkler courses, the introduction to sprinkler systems and maintenance, and the flexibility that this course offers. In its entirety, it's a 5-day course, and if you attend the full 5 days, you'll have a really comprehensive knowledge of the sprinkler systems with hands-on maintenance experience. We do, however, recognise that not everyone will be undertaking the practical aspects of the work themselves, and they may have maintenance engineers that have contracts to service your kit, but you still have an overall responsibility for the sprinkler systems, so you do need to have an understanding of how they work. In this case, If you would like an introduction to what sprinkler systems are, how they came to be, their functions, how they need to be set up to work, and an understanding of what can go wrong if they're not sufficiently maintained, then you are able to take just the first 2 days of this course, which is known as the C20A. Indeed, if you already have a good working knowledge of sprinklers and you are now starting to do more of the maintenance yourself, where this was maybe undertaken by someone else in the past, you can attend just the final 3 days of the course, which is known as the C20B. I wanted to flag up that it's a really important flexibility the FPA offers and means that you don't have to waste your time or your money on attending parts of the course if they are not relevant to you. Okay, right, I will now take you down to our practical training facilities to give you an idea of what sort of things we cover on the course. So this is our purpose-built installation control valve chamber, and in here we've got a selection of installation control valves of different types. We've actually got 14 valves in here so that delegates who come on our courses can get a good hands-on experience of using the valves themselves. This is purpose-built, as I said, and last year we had over 130 delegates attend our courses to do hands-on training in this very room. So I'll just walk around and show you the different types of valves that we've got. Starting at the end here, we've got deluge valves, dry and wet valves, and we've got a dry pipe valve here, a wet installation control valve, which is obviously the most common valve that anybody uses, and then we've got other deluge valves trimmed in different ways to be pre-action valves. We've got pre-action valve, double acting, and we've got a butterfly wafer alarm valve here, the old type. So it's a lot of those sold, so obviously if you want to get experience of using that one, that might be the thing to use. We've got more wet valves, and then as we look along here, we've got alternate wet and dry valves. At the back there, we've got a project fire zone control valve, and then on the corner there, we've got a pre-action valve, which has got a detection system. Behind there with the light on, you can see an electronic panel, which is lit up, and it's got a simulation to a detection system so that we can enact a sort of real-life experience of a detection system going off and setting off the pre-action valve. On the table here, we've got a lot of examples of pressure switches and flow switches and valves that we've taken out and stripped down so that you can get hands-on experience of actually taking these things apart and just having a play around with it really. But you'll learn a lot from the experience of being in this room. This is our sprinkler pump room, and we've got 3 pumps in here. We've got a diesel pump, an electric pump and a small jockey pump. Obviously the pump room is an essential part of the kit for a sprinkler system, and delegates coming on our courses will get hands-on experience of using this equipment. I'll walk you through the pump room now and I'll show you the testing equipment that the delegates can use. So in the background we've got what would normally be a duty pump, which is the electric pump. It's an ordinary Housing Group 1 pump with the electric supply and electric panel behind it, all of which will be explained to anybody who comes on the course. On the right here we've got the diesel pump, which is normally a standby pump. This is actually a high hazard pump. The 2 pumps don't match, but that gives delegates a bit more sort of real world experience than just coming on the course, because ideally the 2 would match, but obviously you're going to learn a lot more from having 2 mismatched pumps. And in the back there we've got a small jockey pump as well, which obviously tops up the system pressure. It's all connected into the pump start board, so we will be showing you how to use this pump start board. Obviously we've got the pressure switches for the 3 pumps, starting with the jockey, the electric and the diesel pump, and we'll show you how to test that, how to bring the pumps in, and then more importantly we'll be showing you how to do a pressure and flow test for each pump, so we can do a pump performance test using the flow meters. We've got a flow meter here and the flow test line, which turns the water back into the tank located just outside. Our water tank is just through the wall there, and it's a fully approved LPCB water storage tank. So just running around the room, obviously we'll show you which valves to operate and which ones need to be closed, explain the pump starter panels such as this panel, and towards the back here we've got the remote alarm panel with all the signals on it. We'll explain what signals you should be receiving and the function of this panel, and generally talking you through the LPC rules at the same time to make sure everything's fully compliant with the current standards. Okay, so this is our sprinkler tank. It's a purpose-built LPCB approved sprinkler tank. It's of 19 cubic metres, so it's slightly smaller than a normal sprinkler tank, but we've had it built so that you can see all the ancillary fittings and get experience of it. It doesn't just apply if you're a installer or a maintainer, but if you're a designer, by having this here you can see what you actually need to put on the tank and the amount of space that it takes up. Our particular tank is a modern tank. It's got the manway at the base so that you can get in and out of the tank if you need to go and service the tank. Obviously we've got the contents gauge and the nameplate here, which tells you the capacity, the diameter and everything else. But the tank itself is fed from the water supply there, which rises up the tank, which is this pipe here has got trace heating lagging on it to stop it freezing. There's an immersion heater there to stop the ball valves from freezing, and then the ball valve housing on the top there is accessible by a ladder. We've got the ladder, which is currently in the pump house. We can bring that out and put it against the tank, fit it into the frame, and you can go up on top of the tank, have a look into the tank, work the ball valves and see for yourself. So it's good experience. Over here we've got the drain, so we can drain the tank, which is also lagged to prevent it from freezing. And then on the top here you can see the telltale and the overflow pipe, just in case there's a problem. So what you've got here is a fully functioning sprinkler tank for you to come and look at and get familiar with.
Many of the speakers today have discussed how we are able to adapt and tailor our courses to your individual requirements. My colleague Beata is now going to talk to you about our bespoke courses and how we go about creating these and delivering them at your place of work.
Hello, my name is Beata Mrozik and I'm the FPA training coordinator. I look after several things, including the CFPA diploma, which you heard Tasman Rowan talk about earlier on today. One of the other things I look after is our in-house training, which is where we bring our training courses to your place of work. Often, one of the reasons the companies contact us for bespoke or in-house training is for the ease. If you have several staff that need to attend the same training, it's much more straightforward to gather staff together at your place of work and do it there. Frequently, it can also work out more cost-effective for us to come to you to deliver the course rather than you send your staff to one of our open courses. All of our listed courses can be adapted in some way to be delivered at your place of work. Most we can deliver with no changes at all. Some we need to think about ways we can replace the practical aspects of the training courses, and that is something that I will often chat through with customers whilst they considering all options. Sometimes it works out that if they feel the practical aspect is a very important part of the course, that they would prefer to send staff to our facilities. However, most of the times we can come to a compromise. We also have a few courses that we now only deliver at customer premises because they are relevant to a specific group of people and not as popular as many of our mainstream courses. The process of in-house training inquiries usually is directed to me, and I will contact you and discuss your requirements. This includes practical considerations such as how many people you need trained, where you plan to do it, when would you like to do it, what equipment you have on site, or where your company is located. We will also talk about the learning outcomes you hope to achieve, if CPD is required, and what certification you would like from the course. Sometimes it could be that you don't require a specific part of the course, so we can drop this from the timetable. It's also common for customers to ask if we can add something into a course. This could be a part of another course, or it could be something very bespoke to the operations, such as business objectives or a process. We can put you in touch with our trainers who can undertake a site visit to make sure that the training you are planning is feasible. We can also create a completely new course that meets a particular requirement, for example, a change in legislation or an updated standard. If you provide us with examples, information and plans, we can incorporate your workplace or scenarios from your workplace into our training course materials so that we can discuss examples. We use your company. This clearly has really benefits to your staff. Once I have all the information, I will build you a bespoke quote, which is sent over with a guideline timetable and optional dates for the trainer. Hopefully we then contract with schools or we amend the quotes to meet your needs. Once the training has been provided, we also can provide you with an ongoing monitoring or verification service. We can undertake the refresher courses and help support you with ensuring that your delegates remain up to date in their learning. Discounts are available for companies that would like to book a series of training courses. For example, this would be if you have multiple sites or staff that you need to train for fire warden training, or if you have a group of staff that require a basic fire risk assessment training and a group of staff that require a higher managerial level of fire risk assessment training. So our bespoke training offers a really valuable and flexible service that has very few limitations. We can modify, expand and tailor courses as necessary, and we are happy to deliver our training throughout the UK. Thank you.
Next, we have another case study from Transport for London, who are going to talk about their experience of using the FPA over many years and the benefits this has provided to a safe running of travel logistics in our capital city.
Hello again. We're now joined by Sandy Robbie, who is a Business Customer Service Officer for Transport for London. Transport for London have used the FPA to coordinate several fire safety training sessions, and we're going to chat about the types of training they have completed and their experience of using the FPA as a training provider. Okay, Sandy, thank you so much for joining us today. If I can ask, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and how fire safety fits into your role?
Yes. Basically, I am a Business Customer Services Officer for Asset Operations, which is a team within Transport for London. And one of my main responsibilities is to ensure that our operations team completes all safety awareness and responsibility courses. Keeping our customers and our staff, of course, and those that work with us, is part of our vision, as well as being integral to our health and safety policy.
So Transport for London have undertaken several training courses with us at the FPA, so fire risk assessment courses, building safety manager courses, and understanding fire stopping, just to name a few. So what are the things that attracted you to use the FPA for your training?
Basically, we were recommended to the Fire Protection Association by TfL's Health and Safety Executive.
And how did you find the process of booking the training courses with us?
Very effective and easy to manage. The last course that we held was the C10 Building Safety Manager, and that was held last August in a semi-lockdown situation. But it all went very well.
So how did you find the learning options that the FPA provided for you? Was there anything in particular that stood out from the courses?
I have talked to a number of our candidates on that course, and the main feedback that we found, they highlighted the fire logbook. They found this very comprehensive. It certainly helped them to put into context the information that we need to store to demonstrate good compliance and maintenance practice.
What would you say are the biggest fire safety challenges you face on a day-to-day basis in your role?
One of our responsibilities is to ensure that we keep up-to-date records for all our bus stations, and we've got quite a few of them, and to ensure that those records are accessible by several teams across the organisation. Both for their statutory compliance and good maintenance.
So what is the impact that the training courses have had on your work? Is there anything you can do before, or anything that you're now doing differently?
We have recognised the fact that some areas were perhaps being overspecified. We were concentrating too many resources on certain things. So what we found is that this course has helped us to define our action plan for fire risk assessments, strategies and common fire safety related issues that arise from inspections and servicings.
So as a whole, what do you think TfL will be working towards with their fire safety?
We will continue to enhance and manage our fully integrated asset management systems that comprise the fire safety logbook.
So it's been really lovely speaking to you today, Sandy. Thank you so much for your time. We're really looking forward to working with Transport for London again at some point in the future with providing training courses. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
We now return to the Head of Training, Claire Wright, who is going to give a summary of the qualifications we offer and why we are so proud of the routes we provide to help you achieve competency.
Since the introduction of the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order, discussions around training course delivery have involved questions of competency. Training and education form a vital piece of the competency network, and FPA experts have been delivering high-quality fire risk assessor training for many years. In order, however, to truly demonstrate competency in the profession, we have identified 6 key pillars. Those being third-party approval for specialist work, demonstrable experience when undertaking work in high-risk environments such as hospitals or other care settings. Self-awareness, knowing the limits of your own skill set, when to turn a job down and when to ask for help. Trustworthiness, trusted to do the right thing by the organisation, the people within the building and within the law. Good knowledge and application. It's very important that you ensure that your knowledge has come from reputable sources. Always ensure your knowledge is from a valid source, and you must be able to apply this knowledge appropriately to the situation and to the building. And finally, being committed to and actively engaged in continued professional development. The road to competency is a long one. Since the Grenfell Tower tragedy, the industry has joined forces to provide more robust guidance and greater leadership in this regard, and has recently published an approved code of practice for fire risk assessor competency. In order to develop our pathways to offer courses in line with these emerging standards, the FPA has partnered with the awarding body for building education to offer a third-party accredited route of training for fire risk assessors, beginning at level 3 and progressing to level 4. At level 3, the individual will be expected to work within the boundaries of specified and appropriate guidance and make assessments and decisions based upon a sound understanding of both fire safety systems and guidance. A level 4 individual will be expected to work largely unsupervised within a more complex environment and apply a variety of solutions based on application of the guides and standards. All fire risk assessors should be demonstrating the 6 pillars and be clear on the limitations of their own skill set. The programme of training involves a combination of classroom or online input, practical work and portfolio building. Learners will be expected to submit at least 3 fire risk assessments along with supplementary documents describing their decision-making process and demonstrating their work with customers. You will have up to 6 months to complete the qualification, and assessments will be externally verified by the awarding body. The FPA provides 2 qualification pathways for 2 specific job roles, but both qualifications start with a fire risk assessment course. The Confederation of Fire Protection Associations Europe is an association of national organisations within Europe concerned primarily with prevention, protection, security and the environment. With 24 member countries, the Commission for Training has developed a structured programme of training syllabuses with the aim of providing a pan-European harmonised approach for fire safety professionals. CFPA Europe Diploma in Fire Prevention begins with the technical knowledge for fire risk assessment, fire prevention systems and building fire safety. Progressing to fire safety management principles, the qualification is completed by a presentation to a panel of experts of your own fire safety strategy or fire safety policy. The awarding body for building education is a subsidiary of Birmingham City University. ABBY is Ofqual regulated, providing quality assurance and certification for a range of qualifications related to the built environment, including the Fire Risk Assessment Level 3 certificate and Level 4 diploma. These qualifications sit on the UK regulated qualifications framework. Total guided learning hours for the Level 3 certificate is 130 hours, consisting of 4 modules. working in a safe and professional manner, fundamental principles and concepts for fire risk assessment, prepare to undertake fire risk assessment, and undertake fire risk assessments. Those completing the Level 4 diploma will also need to attend the Advanced Principles and Concepts for Fire Risk Assessment in addition to the other 4 units.
Our final presentation today is by Dennis Davis, who is the Executive Officer at the Fire Sector Federation. Dennis is going to cover competency, including where to start, responsibilities, standards and guidance.
Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Davis. I'm the Executive Officer of the Fire Sector Federation, and I've been asked to briefly introduce to you the subject of competency, and more specifically the role of the fire risk assessor within the new regimes which are becoming established as we move forward following the Grenfell Tower fire tragedy. Competency is often assumed to be understood by many people, but it's quite an involved area of knowledge, experience, skills, and of course, ultimately, behaviour. It also brings with it high levels of accountability and responsibility. Accountability for making sure that things are done properly, supervised and controlled, and the personal responsibility that falls upon every individual, all of us, to make sure that we're doing our job properly to the best of our abilities. Fundamentally, when the review post-Grenfell started, Dame Judith Hackett raised the particular concern about culture within the whole construction industry. A race to the bottom was one of the phrases she used, and at the part of the discussion where we really tried to understand that, people realised that value engineering and terms about those sorts of issues really had created a culture where people were more concerned on price and hitting time deadlines to avoid penalties than actually ensuring the task was being done properly. Competency, therefore, brings together a whole series of elements to try and ensure that we behave and act in an ethical way to deliver a service that is fit for purpose and has the quality assurance that's needed to make good things happen. Let me now turn to fire and fire risk assessment in particular. Many people assume they understand fire. They may have done something in their youth around a training program. They may have been involved in a community training program from the Fire and Rescue Service. But this is false knowledge quite often, very basic and more about life chances. In other words, helping you survive fire. What I want to talk about is fire as a science and fire as a practice built around a series of principles to ensure we are fire safe. Over the years, groups have tried hard to penetrate knowledge into different parts of our construction sectors. And on the slide, you will see a rather colourful table. Within that table are greens and reds traffic lights signs, which try to indicate fine knowledge and understanding within different parts of the construction cycle, which is used by the RIBA groups such as that, to follow a building from its inception to its ultimate destruction. And equally, down the other side of the column is a list of those who interact with that building from the day it starts to be designed until it's used, occupied, and ultimately again demolished. What you see is a patchwork. There are not that many greens and there are quite a few reds, indicating that across the spectrum of a building's life, the levels of competency and understanding about fire are very fragmented. There is also a slide there indicating a take from a video that talks about the science of fire as a fuel and all the impacts that go with that. Because it's only by understanding the science of fire albeit in a limited way, in a common sense way, that you really do start to see the pitfalls that can arise within a building. And the bottom part of the slide shows a construction built around a series of elements which we used within the Fire Sector Federation to create our own levels of understanding and competency around fire risk assessment. What you'll notice is it starts off from the two building bricks of science and practice and moves forward through different areas until it reaches a conclusion of a broad range of issues. This is important because how we tailor competency to our individual roles is extremely important. We're all part, perhaps, of one big building safety sector, but within that sector, there are hundreds of subsectors with individual roles and duties. So let's look at some of those roles and duties, the responsibilities and the standards that we're now expected to perform too. On the next slide, you will see that starting with Dame Judith's review, we ultimately moved forward with a fire safety bill and ultimately a building safety bill, legislative change that will bring particular responsibilities onto individuals. Those responsibilities ultimately will be very clear, very defined, and will carry penalties for failure. But you're not alone in this process of putting a legal framework in place, because there has also been considerable work done by industry to try and move forward understanding around fire and safety in buildings. And a second of those reports that you will see, setting the bar, is the coming together of the whole industry sector to try and produce documentation, recommendations and actions which are now being implemented, which will improve the overall arrangements across the sector. The 12 working groups that were established covered the spectrum from fire engineers through fire risk assessors, through the fire service as enforcers, and on into other groups such as building safety managers, and ultimately those who provide the products and services which we all use. This is a complex world, make no mistake about it. The construction sector is one of the largest employers in the country, and the number of buildings, their variations in design, features, products used, heights, and the way they are actually controlled all vary. Complex buildings where residential premises exist on commercial premises, or premises that are underground, which may involve large numbers of people in media or other entertainment venues. Catering for that wide spectrum within one legal framework and one set of criteria for competency was always going to be a very difficult task, but a great deal of work has been done. And some of that is now being refined through British standards. We've already seen a standard release which provides a framework for competency. It's only just this month happened, but it will provide a structural way of looking at competency, particularly building safety, and that includes fire safety, across all professional working groups. We've also now got a standard emerging for building safety managers, a group again that will have particular responsibilities. And it's worth remembering that with these responsibilities, sometimes the task cannot be performed by one individual alone. Looking after a building from the point of view of ensuring it's gas safe, electric safe, water safe, Legionnaire safe, fire safe, is a big complex task in a big complex of buildings. And you can imagine these will be teams of people with different professional qualities. We've also been given now a draft standard to consider in terms of cladding systems. We all know the impact this had at Grenfell, And now a standard is being developed to provide a systematic route to evaluate and assess the cladding on a building. So we're not alone, but these responsibilities are quite clear and the standards are being developed progressively to meet their needs. Let me now move on briefly to what sort of guidance and practice might exist to assist us. I mentioned I'm from the Fire Sector Federation and particularly have a role that relates to fire risk assessors. We've been working away as a working group as part of that Setting the Bar initiative to develop standards and practices that will assist both our profession so that the quality meets the requirements outside our industry, but equally we also have been providing information which we hope will assist those who have responsibilities and accountabilities to ensure buildings are safe. Three key elements of that work are on the slide. The first is the development of a code of practice, an approved code of practice for fire risk assessment. This work was originally done quite a few years ago on the introduction of the fire safety order, and it was done by a group of practitioners from across the sectors together with the government to provide advice on how to conduct and be competent in the task of conducting a fire risk assessment. That group subsequently passed the work through to the Fire Sector Federation, who've taken responsibility for it, and we have reviewed that documentation and hopefully improved and added to its content. The work now is available freely on the Fire Sector Federation website, but it's really intended to help inform those who carry out the task and those who provide training for those individuals. It's not really aimed, therefore, at the responsible person, but it's useful for the responsible person to look at and consider, because it provides an intelligent background by which they can then judge the sort of people they may need to use in their buildings. To assist in that process as well, we've provided a guide on choosing a fire risk assessor. And this is again freely available and downloadable, but allows the person responsible to make an informed choice and to go to the correct areas and look for the right sorts of people to meet their need. I say this because risk assessment is variable, dependent upon risk, as its name suggests. In other words, in a simple building, a corner shop, something of that order, you do not need the services necessarily of a consultant or a fire risk assessor to carry out the work. But certainly when you become involved with higher risk buildings, as I've already mentioned, the task may be bigger than one person anyway, but you will certainly need the higher level of standard of work. So to assist in that process, we've established a national register of people who belong to a professional body and have therefore subjected themselves to some form of second assessment and even third assessment of their capabilities and competencies. And again, that national register lives on the Fire Sector Federation website. So what can you expect from these organisations in terms of quality and assurance? Two key elements I've already touched upon relate to fire risk assessment. The first is about belonging to a professional organisation, a professional body. Now, within the fire risk assessment area, those professional bodies tend to be groups like the Institution of Fire Engineers, the Institution of Fire Safety Managers, the Institution of Fire Protection Officers, and so on. So there are groups and professional bodies who have set out standards for membership to ensure that the people who are in their organisations are the right sorts of people for the task. That second level of assessment of their knowledge, their experience, their skills is a very key part of ensuring that they are competent to do their job. It also ensures, through a professional body, that there is control over their behaviour and hence their ethical grounding. This again is important, not simply to manage the odd individual who doesn't perform to the way a contractor is expected to perform, but it equally ensures that they manage to stay up to date through CPD, or that they have regular updates and training sessions so that they remain current as to what is happening. This is critical in an area like construction, where products and processes change almost daily, where new products come onto the market, new ways of constructing and developing buildings happen, and there is a tremendous drive to try and stay up to date. The professional body offers that level of support to its member and is an important stage in the process. But we also recommend there should be a third stage, and we call this accredited third-party certification, primarily because there are only two routes well established at the moment in the UK by which you can do that. The first is through the Engineering Council as part of being one of their registered professional bodies, and within fire risk assessment, only the Institution of Fire Engineers provides that routing. If you're a member of the Institution of Fire Engineers and on their registers as a fire risk assessor, they can assess you and place you within that registration process. If you're not a working member of the IFE, then you tend to go down one of the other routes through a scheme that provides United Kingdom Accreditation Service approval. That route, UCAS, is usually through a scheme such as those offered by BAE, which is the SP205, or places such as Warrington, which will again offer their own schemes, the National Security Inspectorate and the Security Services Inspectorate Advisory Board. All of these organisations provide that level of access. And on the National Register, which I've touched upon, an indication is made both of an individual's professional body and the third-party approval system, if they've got that. At the moment, just to give you a sense, of around 650 people on those registers, some of which are companies who employ multiple number of individuals. On those registers, you will find about 2/3 have third-party approval. And the recommendation from the Approved Code of Practice of the Fire Sector Federation is that you should use people with that level of qualification and approval if you're dealing in the higher risk category buildings. For the lower risks, you don't need that high level. Having a professional body status should be sufficient to guarantee that you're dealing with a competent person working to approved standards. So, just to bring these things together, just like any other discipline, competent fire risk assessors require appropriate skills, knowledge, experience, and behaviour. Competency demands that you're never afraid to say that you don't know something. And being able to put your hand up and ask for advice is not a failure, it's a success. Equally, fire risk assessment is a foundation. Quite often people only carry out their fire risk assessment once the building is occupied. This is a major weakness. Understanding the strategy behind a building's fire safety arrangements right at the design stage is very, very important. And carrying that right the way through the management of the fire safety of that building throughout its life is the key to success. Similarly, the responsibilities and accountabilities that are now increasing cannot, as I've already said, be vested just in one person. In some cases, this has to be a team. A competent person with professional recognition and third-party assurance are the best to provide the advice that's needed. But you need to be careful in your selection so that you do not over-emphasize the risk. Seeking that advice is often given freely so that you can choose the right person. And finally, I would like to say that as a responsible industry, the Fire Sector Federation will always try where it can to assist you. So if there are queries, then please get in touch.
I will also say goodbye now, as Claire Wright will return with the closing comments for the day. I hope you have enjoyed the day, and we hope to welcome you at an FPA training course in the near future.
So thank you for joining us today. We hope you found it interesting and informative. I'd like to thank everyone who has contributed their time to provide such a variety of valuable viewpoints and experiences. We may have raised a number of questions for you to think about regarding your own training or your employees, and if so, you'll find a number of related articles and news items on our website. If you have your eye on a particular course or qualification, we're happy to offer you a 10% discount on courses booked within the next 30 days. You'll receive an email shortly with a code enabling you to do this via our website. You'll also be able to join the thought leadership discussions regarding fire safety by connecting to us on LinkedIn or following us on Twitter. If you do need to connect to us directly via email or phone, the team are here to help. We've been really pleased to share some of the work we do in this way, and we look forward to working with you in the future.